Here for a while, I have been wanting to do a build series of videos where I take a bare chassis, build it up with a specific purpose in mind, and ultimately have a vehicle that I can take out and do running videos and that kind of thing. This is going to be part one in that video series. Over about the last year and a half, I have been collecting components to start a build. So that's what you see in front of me here on the bench. Basically, I have everything that is needed to make a complete running chassis. I have not decided on a body yet. I've been going back and forth on a few different ideas, and I will talk a little bit about my goals for this project, and maybe you guys can have some recommendations. Leave me a comment on what body you think that I should go with and why, because I'm definitely open to suggestion. What I've got here is an Element Enduro Builder's Kit version 2. There were two different versions of this kit, obviously, and there were a couple things that I liked better about this one. This one has a few of the hard parts that you pretty much always have to upgrade when you do an Element Enduro chassis kit, and I kind of think that it has better shocks, but I can't really confirm that. But anyhow, the version 2 kit is the one I've gone with, and I haven't even opened the box yet, but that's what it's going to be based on. This is going to be a competition rig. That is the goal for it, is a Class 2 legal competition rig. I originally was going to build it as a Class 1 rig, but I kind of changed my mind. I think Class 2 might just be a little bit easier to get decent performance out of, because I haven't really been heavily into competition, so I don't have a lot of experience with it. And it seems like Class 1 to me, and you know, Class 2 guys don't get offended, but Class 1 seems to be a little bit more of a more advanced class, I think. I think it's a little bit harder to be competitive in Class 1. And so I think I'm going to start with this, and again, build this into a Class 2 dedicated rig. One of the reasons I went with the Enduro over an SCX10 or TRX4 or whatever is mainly because I don't have one. I have an SCX10 too, I've got a TRX4, I've got a HPI Venture. I wanted something I didn't have. A couple of things that the Enduro has that I really like is the built-in overdrive. That's something that I would pretty much have to add to any other vehicle. It comes with it in the kit. Element is known to make really decent shocks, so I shouldn't have to upgrade the shocks right off the bat. So that's kind of a plus for me. I didn't want to go with any kind of a cheater chassis. It's not really what I'm into. I really like the scale aspect, the scale realism aspect of this hobby, which is really what got me into it in the first place. So I am going to stick with a traditional C-channel type frame. I'm not going to be doing a carbon fiber or aluminum, flat chassis or anything like that. Would probably be a little bit more competitive, but it's just not what I'm into, at least not at this point. So that's the chassis I'm going to go with. Beyond that, again, this is going to be a Class 2 rig. The tires that I've chosen are the Proline BF Goodrich Mud Terrain KM3s in the 4.75. Now, I've already opened these out of the package and installed the foams in them because I actually bought these for another truck. I built them up onto a set of wheels, put them on the truck. They didn't really fit right. So I set these aside for this project. So what I've got here is I've got the KM3 Mud Terrains, and the blue dot tells you that those are in the Predator compound, which is a really super soft, sticky compound. So hopefully they're going to work well for what I want to do. The foams in these, I am using Crawler Innovations 2-stage foams. They're the Little Nova, or Lil Nova, however you want to say it. 2-stage foams. They have the Comp Cup inners, and this one has the soft outer, and that's going to be my front tires. And then for the rears, same setup with a firm outer rather than soft. In the other trucks that I have, I do like a firmer foam in the back when you're, going up on rocks, and all the weight transfers to the back tires. Just seems to me to work a little better to have a firm foam back there. So that's what I've got. So for the wheels, I wanted to do something a little different that I hadn't done before. I've never owned anything by Locked Up RC. So I went to their website and checked out the stuff that they have to offer. And it's a little bit different the way they do their wheels. You basically have to pick every single component. Now, they did have kind of a kit that you can choose. You go down, you choose your base wheel, you choose your beadlock ring, you choose what type of hardware you want, you choose if you need hubs, etc. So that's what I did. So what I've got here are the Locked Up RC. They call these the rock cutters. So I've got the 1.9 rock cutter wheels, and in black, obviously. And then the beadlock rings, they call these the orb. Yeah, I think that's just all they're called, black orb. So these are the beadlock rings that I've got to go along with it. And for hardware, you just buy all these little packs of scale hardware. So these are going to be the beadlock, all the beadlock M2x8, I believe, bolts. Could be wrong, I'd have to check it. But anyhow, those are the hardware for the beadlock. And then I've also got SSD scale hardware for the lug nuts. Those are going to be in stainless. And I've also got SSD brake rotors that I've lost. I've got them somewhere. But I do have SSD scale brake rotors. I think you get a scale point for that. So I figured I'd throw those on there. And I have some SSD SLW hubs. These are SLW compatible wheels, so you can pretty much use any SLW hub. So that's what I'm doing for wheels. Now, as far as other small things I've got for the chassis here, one thing I don't like about the Element Enduro is the look of the axles. I just think they're ugly as hell. So here I've got, this is the SSD aluminum HD diff covers, and I think it's just a better looking diff cover. Sorry about the shining there, but they have a nice little kind of a skid plate built into them, which I think looks cool and, you know, help not get hung up quite as easily, hopefully. So I've got two of those for the front and rear diff. And I've also got from DSM Off-Road, this is the DSM Off-Road Oh-So Low battery tray for the Element. Now this battery tray is super tiny. It pretty much weighs nothing. And what this is made for is these little 850 milliamp hour batteries like I've got here. These little tiny little tattoo batteries. Now this 850, again, since this is going to be strictly a comp vehicle, this 850 milliamp hour battery is going to be plenty. It's super lightweight. It's not going to take up much space in the chassis. So I am building this truck around being able to use the 850 milliamp tattoo batteries. I've got a couple of those to go with it, and I'll probably pick up a couple more. But that battery tray will allow me to use those batteries. Now, also from DSM Off-Road is their dual lay-down servo mount. And the way this thing works is it actually has one mount for a servo winch and one mount for your regular steering servo. And it does lay down the steering servo. The steering servo I have is a fairly large, heavy servo. So I think it will help a little bit to get it laid down in the chassis and just keep the center of gravity a little bit lower. So going with that, it does come with their little, I can't even remember what they call this thing, but it's basically, a lot of guys use this in place of a winch. It's got like an elastic cord, so you can hook it on something and it helps you pull if you don't have a winch. I probably will not be using that thing, although the hook's kind of interesting. I might actually use the hook, we'll see. But as far as servos go, since we're there, I do actually have a servo winch. I've gone with Three Brothers. This is their Overlander winch kit. So it's a fairly strong winch. And the nice thing about this is you don't need any kind of external controller. Everything is built into the servo winch itself. So that's what I'm going to be using there. I've actually got one of those on one of my other trucks, and it works really well. And for me, again, the less components I can have, the better. So that's one thing I really liked about that one. I just wanted an all-in-one solution rather than like a scale winch and a separate controller. As far as steering servo, I've got the Three Brothers G14. Now this thing is a monster. This is, I don't know if you can see that there, but this thing does 800 ounces at 12 volts. And this thing's going to be running on 3S, so I should be pretty much getting full power out of that servo, no problem. And beyond that, do have a Vanquish servo horn. I really like these Vanquish horns. They're light, they're very high quality, so going to be going with that. As far as power goes, what I've got here is a Three Brothers Yellow Jacket in the 1500 kV size. So one of the goals for this truck was to keep it as lightweight as possible. The components I choose were really based on weight, a lot of them. So like the wheels, I went with the aluminum wheels to try to keep the weight down. I went with the aluminum diff covers to try to keep the weight down. That's why I didn't go with brass, and a lot of guys like to hang brass all over the bottom of the truck. I'm going to try not to do that. My goal is to try to make it as light as possible and get the performance from being lightweight rather than just weighing down the chassis as much as possible. So that's one of the reasons I went with the Yellow Jacket. Is these are super lightweight, they're small, and on these Outrunner motors, you get a whole lot of low speed resolution, which is something that I really like. You know, maybe the way different guys drive. You know, I'm not really into wheel speed. I just like the really low speed modulation that you can get out of these Outrunner motors. So that's one of the reasons I went with that. As far as an ESC, one thing I don't like about the Outrunner style motors is the noise. Usually your ESC screams. You got one of those things out in the woods and you know you can hear it from a mile away. It's just, I'm not really a fan. So one of the things that I had to wait for many months to get my hands on was this Holmes Hobbies Crawlmaster Mini ESC version 2. So they had the version 1, and when I saw that I immediately knew I wanted it. And then they pretty much quit making them because they were having issues with them. So I was never able to get my hands on one. So I had to wait until they refined the design and came out with the V2. And the V2 or any of the Crawlmaster Minis are supposed to be dead silent on these Outrunner motors. That's what they're designed for. Again, super lightweight. It doesn't use a heat sink. This particular one is a kit, so I actually have to solder it all together. It does have, you know, all the components are on the board, but you got to solder all the wires on. You got to solder the BEC onto it. So I will probably do, in one of the videos, I will do a video on how to put this thing together when I get to that point. But that is pretty much, I think that's everything I've got right at the moment. So I appreciate you watching. Hopefully this video wasn't too long-winded. But again, I haven't decided on a body, and I'm really leaning towards something lightweight. So if anybody has any suggestions, drop me a comment and let me know what you think. And I'll see you next time.